2. The point is now available for
God
capture.
fucking damn it, I hate gambling! See?
Hello!
I make it look easy!
The outcome was splendid.
Oh dear, you almost shocked me to death this time! You are an amateur and a virgin. This is bad!
Don't touch me, pal. I will blow up right in your face.
Ah, I must be dreaming.
Kiss me.
Excellent.
I murdered your dick as well. So, your deadly skill is jogging? Mine is money. Good Lord, you fight like a witch.
The outcome was splendid.
Money, but why? You died as you lived. Horny all day.
That was unfortunate.
Baba Booey.
See? Ah. See?
Incoming!
Yippee-ki-yay! Damn it, I hate gambling! Let go! Yippee-ki-yay! Hello, God fucking damn it, I hate
The
gambling!
control point. Alert. The control point is being
Baba
contested.
Booey.
Yippee-ki-yay! Yippee-ki-yay!
Incoming! Money, 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 money.
Happy trails! Butter! Pain is
Money, money, money,
happy trails! And your pain is happy trails! I make it look money!
Incoming! Go incoming!
Control point enabled. Get going. Alert. The control point is being captured.
Yippee-ki-yay!
Excellent.
You imbecile! You've doomed everyone! Happy trails! Yes, money! My friend. We've done it! Victory is ours! Yes!
I do not have time to come.
4, 3, 2.
Here we go! Yes!
uses for maggots I have ever seen.
Let's do this Texas style.
3, 2, 1.
Soldier, hey, it's falling. There's something I want you to look into.
Point is now available to capture.
How'd that plan turn out for you, dummy?
What's the matter, Ghost? Don't you want to live forever?
2, 1.
Then.
Take that, you sneaky bastard! My job is done.
Too much
You're
bare knuckle
finished.
excite. Think you're ready to have your eyes break from widening in surprise, and your comic holding hands fall off your very arms when you get a look at the rest of this action-packed ish starring me.
Pain is... I will eat you. Each and every one of you. I will eat your pain is... And you're sweet to me, like a cake is sweet. My pain is... My pain is... Need some help here? Oh, no, take help. I'm gonna call you. Num, num, num.
the ropes from here.
On February 6, 2014, police discovered the bodies of 13-year-old Daniel Garcia, 11-year-old Kayla Garcia, and 41-year-old Luis Garcia in their Carroll County, Georgia home. Police were alerted by Luis Garcia's boss after he had missed 2 days of work without notice. Officers visited the home and got no response, but they did see a kitchen light and television were on in the house, which raised their suspicions. After checking with the mother of Daniel and Kayla, who said they should have been home with their father at the time, they checked with the schools and found that both kids had been absent for the last 2 days. Authorities then acquired a search warrant for the Garcia house, where they discovered a grisly scene. 13-year-old Daniel Garcia was discovered on the living room couch where he had been shot dead. 11-year-old Kayla was also found shot to death in her room. Police believe Luis Garcia shot his 2 children with a handgun after having a heated argument with his wife on the phone. He then turned the gun on himself and took his own life. Luis and his wife were having relationship issues, and she left to New York to visit family after a bad fight that resulted in Luis being charged with assault. According to a source that claims to be a close friend of Daniel Garcia, Daniel had missed the school bus on Monday, February 3rd, and his father could not give him a ride because he had been drinking. Later that same day, Daniel and his friends were playing video games when Daniel's father knocked on the door and called him out of his room. Daniel said, "1 sec, guys," and then muted his microphone. His friends waited for him the rest of the night, but Daniel never returned. At the time, they just assumed their friend couldn't play anymore, but now they believe Daniel's father called him out of the room that night to murder him. Daniel and Kayla both love sports, and their schools retired their jersey numbers in honor of their memory. While attending a public memorial for the 2 children, Daniel and Kayla's older brother, Matthew Castro, told reporters, "They were the best bundles of joy anyone could ask for." On Thanksgiving Day 2009, Paul Michael Marriage was enjoying the holiday with his family at his cousin's house in Jupiter, Florida. After eating dinner, they gathered around the piano to sing Christmas and church songs. But the joyous family event soon turned into a nightmare after 35-year-old Paul Marriage left the house and returned with a gun. Paul shot and killed his 33-year-old twin sisters, Carla Marriage and Lisa Knight. Lisa was pregnant at the time. Marriage also shot his brother-in-law, Patrick Knight, who had to be placed in a medically induced coma for 3 months. He then shot and killed his 76-year-old aunt, Raymonda Joseph. After shooting Raymonda once in the shoulder, her husband, Paul's uncle, tried to stop the bleeding as he cowered on the floor next to her. Paul Marriage shot his aunt once more in the chest before turning the gun on his uncle. However, the gun did not fire after Paul attempted to shoot him twice. During the massacre, Marriage could be heard saying, "I have been waiting 20 years to do this." He then entered the room of his cousin's 6-year-old daughter, Michaela Sitton. As Michaela slept in her bed, Paul Marriage shot her and then left the room before quickly returning to shoot her again. He shot her a total of 3 times, once in the back, hip, and head. He then drove away in his blue 2007 Toyota Camry. A manhunt took place for Marriage, but he was not discovered until January 2nd, 2010, after a Florida Keys motel owner recognized him from an episode of America's Most Wanted. Marriage had shaved his head, switched the license plate on his car, and used a car cover to try and hide his vehicle. During the investigation, it was revealed that Paul Marriage had a long history of mental instability and made numerous threats to kill himself and his twin sisters. One of his sisters would eventually get a restraining order against him that would be dropped weeks later. Paul had also shot himself years before during a suicide attempt. On the day of the killings, Paul called his mother to ask for directions to his cousin's house. Afterwards, Carol Marriage turned to her daughter Lisa and said, "I hope he doesn't come and kill us all tonight." "Mom, it came to my mind," her daughter replied, "but don't say that to Dad, because Dad would get upset that we had such ideas." The Thanksgiving murders weren't the only violent tragedy in the Marriage family history. In 1973, Paul's aunt, Sawa Marriage Abrams, shot and killed her husband in their home before calling in her 2 sons one by one and shooting them dead as well. She then turned the gun on herself and ended her own life. During his trial, Paul Marriage used insanity as his defense, but the prosecutors claimed it was premeditated murder after Marriage purchased 4 guns and withdrew $12,000 in preparation for the killings. In October 2011, Marriage pled guilty after making a deal that would spare him the death penalty. He received 7 life sentences with no chance of parole instead. Patrick Knight agreed with sentencing Marriage to life without parole because he wanted to move on with his life and not deal with years of appeals. 6-year-old Michaela's father, Jim Sitton, was pushing for the death sentence and had to be removed from the courtroom after falling to his knees and begging the judge to put Paul Marriage to death. The Sittons also filed a lawsuit against Marriage's parents, alleging they had invited him to the gathering without warning them that their son might be dangerous. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed in 2012 after it was determined that the Marriages had no legal right or ability to control the actions of their son. The Marriages filed a countersuit against the Sittons in 2011, alleging the Sittons were to blame for the bloodbath. Patrick Knight also sued his former in-laws for failing to prevent the killings.